Back with video 2 for this week. We're going to go ahead and go through centering and standardizing variables, as well as making an additive index within STATA. So I wanted to separate the two videos out since there's a lot of stuff to have slammed into one video. It would have been exorbitantly long. Now you can sort of view them at different times. So you can see we're in the world data set, and we're going to be working, if I put my cursor in the right command screen, we're going to be working with this variable right here. So we're going to do two different things to this variable. We're going to mean center the variable, and then we're going to standardize the variable. The reason for mean centering you'll learn later on in the book. It helps when we get to linear regression, but for the purposes of this, we're just going to teach you how to do it. The next thing we're going to do is standardizing, and you'll see very easily why standardization is important. So mean centering a variable is actually very easy. You can see the mean of this variable is right here. It's 86.091. So we're just going to go ahead and I'm going to copy it. So I hit Control-C on mine. And we're going to mean center this variable. The way by which we do that is we're going to generate a new variable. We're going to generate a new variable called trade. We're going to call it trade percent centered. And it is going to be equal to this variable that we're currently looking at minus the mean. So we're going to subtract the mean from every observation in the data set. What this means is that everything that is above the mean will be positive and everything that is below the mean will be negative. So we just simply hit enter, and we've generated this new data point, and let's take a look at it. And you can see that the mean is as close as we can get to zero with using this sort of brute tactic to mean center the data. But we have this data that has some quantities that we'll want going forward when we get to linear regression. Let's go ahead and save it. Hooray, we've made a mean centered variable. Now we're going to standardize the data. Standardize this variable, not the mean-centered one, but the original one. It's actually really easy to do. And we're going to do it through what's known as the egen command, which is extensions to generate. So it just gives us more tools within the generate command. So we're going to generate trade percent standardized is equal to the standardization of this data. So what are we doing when we standardize standardize a variable? Well, we're mean centering the data, and then we're dividing it by the standard deviation. So one way that we could do it is take the variable we just created, the trade percent centered variable, and then divide that by the standard deviation of 51.9479. We can do that. That's a number of steps. Or we could use this extensions generate command and just do it automatically. So we have this new data that we've generated. Let's take a look at it. Or new data point we've generated. Centered. I didn't want to look at centered. I apologize for that. I wanted to look at standardization. So you can see the mean is, in essence, 0, and the standard deviation is 1. So what does that mean? What have we essentially done to the data? Well, the mean of the data will be 0. So anything that had the mean, that is at the mean, is 0. What it has done is that if a country has a score of 1 in this data, or -1, it means that they're one standard deviation away from the mean. So the way to interpret these scores is how far the country deviates from the mean of trade percent. So what it says is that on the low end, so below the mean, the lowest country in terms of trade is only a little over 1 standard deviation below the mean. But on the high end, there is a country that's over 6 standard deviations above the mean. So this variable provides us with a nice way to sort of visualize where countries rank, and that's what standard deviation does. It allows us to make these very easily displayed arguments about how things are far outside, how the variable is centralized and how far away outliers are. This one country that is 6 standard deviations away from the mean, is over 6 standard deviations away from the mean, is a significant outlier of the data. Remember what we said 2 videos ago, is that 1 standard deviation away from the mean is 68% of all of the data. 2 standard deviations is 95% of all the data. 6 standard deviations, I don't know off the top of my head, but we're talking in the tiny, tiny points of data. So this country is a significant outlier. And we really get to easily see that by using standard deviation. So now that we've generated this variable, we want to save it and move on to the next step of what we're doing, which is creating an additive index. So in order to do that, we're going to go into the NES, or the GSS, I apologize, and look at abortion variables. So there are a number of variables within the GSS that will let us look at abortion generally. I'm going to show you one just to sort of make the point. So, do you support abortion when there's a strong chance of a defect? And it's simply coded yes or no. So yes is about 73% of the data, no is 26%. So here's a singular variable that shows support towards abortion in one particular category. Another example is this one here, health. So do you support abortion when the woman's health is seriously endangered? Yes, no. So the way in which these are coded are 0 and 1, so that 0 is yes and 1 is no. We want to make an additive index that creates a variable that shows support towards abortion rights. In order to do that, we have to recode this data so that 0 becomes 1 and 1 becomes 0. We can do that with the earlier command we learned at the beginning in the recode. Thankfully, so I don't have to go through and demonstrate it, STATA, or the book has already done that for you. So let's take a look at this variable right here. They've already done that here with _r. And so you can see it's simply a recode. They've flipped the data. And so we have these series of variables, I think 7 in total, which measure different aspects of abortion support. And we're going to add them all together to create this interval level variable that shows degrees of support towards abortion rights. So the command to actually do this is not hard. It's just the difficulty is making sure it's set up. So if you wanted to make an additive index, you would have to make sure all the variables are coded in the same direction, and that direction also makes sense. So when we add all these up, we're going to have a variable that ranges from 0, never supports abortion ever, to 7, always supports abortion. Since we want it to have that direction, so the higher the scale is, the more support for abortion rights, we'd have to flip all of these variables. So if you were creating your own additive index, you'd have to make sure that all your variables are coded in the same direction, or recode them so that they're in the same direction. STATA has already done that, or not STATA, the book has already done that with these _r variables, so I'm just going to have to add them together. But understand that you need to take that into account when you're generating your own additive index, which the homework completely asks you to do. So I'm going to generate this variable. We're going to call it abortion. We're going to spell it right. Abortion, oh my lord. Abortion _n7 is equal to, you've seen this part of the command before. We've used it already. Oh, no. Now we're just going to add them together. And I said there are 7 of them. All right, so we're adding an abortion variable that measures health of the mother, abortion variables that want no more children, abortion variable that measures if the child would grow up in poverty, if the child would be the product of rape, if the mother was single, supports abortion for any reason, or if the child would be born for a significant defect. So these all tap different aspects of abortion support, and you likely know people in your life who support abortion under some conditions but not others. But this is going to create a variable, one singular variable, that does what these other variables don't do, and that's create a continuum of support for abortion. So let's go ahead and take a look at this variable. We're not in the NES anymore, Todd. There we go. And so we have this we have this variable, interval level variable, meaning that we know what the intervals are. And it is an additive variable in which 0 is never supports abortion under any condition, which is about 8% of the data, and 7, which supports abortion in any condition, which is around 37% of the data. And it's, it's really nice and balanced. Let's see what it looks like in terms of just general graphical display. So we're going to graph a bar chart, analytic weight. Remember what data set we're in this time, over you can see that it's a really interesting variable. The largest percentage of the data, so the mode of the data would be 7, but the medium of the data would be 3. So there is around, about almost 40% of the individuals in the sample would support abortion under any condition, but that support drops down, as you can see, pretty significantly as we go on, or as we go down the scale. So not a shocking variable, but it does do something that each of those individual variables didn't do, that were simply dichotomous in nature, is it creates a new interval level variable that allows us to measure general support for abortion rights. We know it is the additive of all of those variables that we included, but we can agree that there is a sort of latent concept that each of them measure, which is general support for abortion, and by adding them together, we can measure that support for abortion in a way that the data set didn't do actually directly for you. So the last thing that we want to do before we save this is we actually want to label this variable abortion rights support. So we're going to label variable abortion _7, parentheses, abortion, not abortions, abortion, right, support. Let's see if we've made that change. Abortion rights support. Perfect. So the last thing we're going to do, save the data and close it out because we're done. So with all the commands that we've done thus far, you should be able to do all the homeworks in Chapter 3. And so you won't be seeing me again until next week. So have a good one.